Good afternoon. Welcome to the afternoon networking session. I'm Kimberly Coffin. I'm Global Technical Director of Supply Chain Assurance for LRQA. And it's a pleasure to be here today and have the opportunity to talk about three of my biggest passions. One is how we can actually refine and improve the supplier verification process. Two, the need to really start leveraging our data that we actually collect and turning that into action to actually really drive resilience in our downstream supply chains. And if you need any evidence to actually really support some of the things that I'm going to talk about today, I'd just like to share with you a few key facts. The first one, we all know this one. Would you be surprised to know that this fact that was issued by the WHO with regards to the prevalence of foodborne illness in the world has not changed since 2015 when it was initially introduced? And look, I'm probably not quite surprised because if we look at kind of how we did last year as an industry, in 2024, the US saw 300 food recalls that actually resulted into 1,400 reported illnesses and nearly 500 hospitalizations. Likewise, in 2024, across the EU and UK, it was the first year we exceeded greater than 5,000 recall events. And what does this tell me? It tells me that really our consumers are actually sending us a message that actually says that we're losing trust. We're losing trust in regulators. We're losing trust in brands. We're losing trust in retailers. And they're really starting to distrust whether we can actually provide them safe food. So let's talk about what we can do to actually change things up and improve things. First and foremost, we need to get smarter about the data that we use. And really, when we think about the data that we collect, we collect a lot of data. And really, we have great end-to-end food safety control systems in place. There's no doubt about that. We as an industry are blessed that we've got this great risk assessment tool called Codex, HACCP. And then we've been using it to help us manage risk with regards to the manufacture of food. That's all underpinned by a great set of benchmark standards that we can use, right, to manage risk. But I'm going to suggest to you that in today's environment and the world that we live in, that if not all of the most significant, a large portion of the significant risks that that are presented to the safety of the food that we sell or produce actually sit within our downstream supply chain. Those risks exist before they even get into our operation. And so what we need to do is get smarter about that supplier data, that information that's going to inform us with regards to where those risks exist in our supply chain. And to do that, I always like to talk about, and if you've seen me talk before, I talk about this ad nauseum, is there's two types of risk data. One is risk exposure data. That's the data that relates to the inherent risks related to the materials, the products. A lot of that data is external source data. It informs the impact that risk can have on your business with regards to food safety. The other type of risk data is risk management data. And that's the data that we collect and we focus a lot on with regards to how well are our suppliers actually doing things? How well are they managing food safety in line with our expectations? The important thing to understand is not only the difference between these types of risk data, but how we bring that risk data together to help us actually better understand where that nexus sits between exposure and what we need to be doing by way of risk management priorities to actually ensure that we're doing the right things and the activities that we're actually delivering are actually making a difference and having an impact with regards to lowering and mitigating the overall level of risk to our products and brands. So we spend a lot of time as an industry, I believe, looking at how we manage risk. So what are those tasks? What are those activities? What's the program going to look like? How do we actually check and measure our suppliers? What do we do? What kind of audit should we have? What do we do to manage risk? We spend much less time actually looking at exposure and looking at those inherent risks and the impact that those can have to our business and to our products. What I'm also going to suggest to you is one of those key indicators, if you will, or those key things to help us actually understand impact, is we can't just look at risk exposure, those external kinds of external information. But what we need to do is we need to think about what leverage do we have with those individual suppliers. And we need to actually add those two pieces of the puzzle together. And we need to think about how much of our business is specifically part of our supplier's business. How little of our business is related to our supplier's overall volume. Because the leverage that we have with suppliers will give us an indicator with regards to how well they're going to meet our expectations, how willing they are to actually collaborate with us, how much they'll actually do and work with us to actually ensure that our expectations are met. And where we have very little leverage and we have some very complicated exposure from a risk perspective, that actually helps us to understand where those critical suppliers are that we should be focusing our attention on. When we look at risk in this manner and look at our suppliers from this view, this is what at LRQA we call supplier segmentation, and our diagnostic modeling that we use to work with customers to help them get that deeper insight into the real supplier risk. And why is this important? Because when you actually understand that segment and where you do work with regards to that diagnostic modeling, and you take more of an interest in that risk exposure, it gives you a more dynamic view. And it can help you to better understand emerging risks, areas of swift change that can actually have a significant impact. And it's all about not just risk assessment, but the impact, risk impact on your business. Once we work through segmentation, we can look at then what is the right activities. It helps us to design the right program. It helps us to better understand where and ensure that we don't have any blind spots in how we run food safety verification program for our supply network. But the real benefit to actually looking at and segmenting the suppliers and actually looking at the right types of activities that we use from a verification perspective is it actually helps us to focus the resources that we've got where they're going to have meaningful impact. And that's spending more time on post-audit activities and improvements, working with those suppliers that we need to work with to lower their risk impact, as well as to actually move from this compliance. Yes, we've audited that company. We've done that. Yep, they meet we've met our due diligence. And we can actually start looking at and taking a view of supplier risk whereby we're lowering the overall impact that that supplier has on our brand and our products. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to introduce Liz Ward. She's a Senior Director of Supplier Quality EMEA at McCormick & Company. Liz, thank you so much for joining me. Do you want to join me here in the middle? We've got a tiny little space.
We'll have to do a bit of a dance, I think.
Tiny little space. And I've invited Liz, and Liz has been so lovely to actually accept our invitation to just spend a couple of minutes with me to talk about really the journey that supply quality has been on the last couple of years at McCormick & Co. And some of the things that you guys have been doing. And I guess the best place to start, Liz, is really to give everybody just a bit of an understanding of kind of those objectives that you guys have got with regards to your supplier audit program.
Yeah, and thank you, Kimberly, for inviting me. So I've been in supply quality in McCormick for 3 years, but in McCormick for 23. So I've seen a huge change over that time. Our main objectives of the program now is really to reduce risk. That's the reason that we're here. We look at suppliers from a point of view of what risk do they cause to our business, but also, more importantly, and I've heard a lot of people talk today about it, the risk to our consumers and our customers, and many of our customers are probably around this room now. So we look at how do we use a combination of both our McCormick Addendum Audit, which is a new program for us, delivered through a third party, and also our, because unfortunately we do have non-GFSI suppliers, how do we manage that risk as well? We also recognise that regulations are becoming ever tighter, and we need to look at not just our raw material suppliers, but also packaging. None of our products can get out onto the world or our customers or our consumers without being packed. And it's to look at how do we manage and reduce the risk from packaging and also our co-packers as well. And also, finally, it's to support our purpose-led performance, which is basically our sustainability. So how do we ensure we get out to all of our suppliers, which are global, with a team? My team is a team of 8 based in EMEA, and I have suppliers all around the world. How do I reduce the impact from a sustainability point of view and an environmental point of view, and making sure I can get my team and my suppliers audited locally without having to travel and use planes and various things like that?
That's great, Liz. I mean, so many, key objectives and really reset to kind of keep up with the times, really, and the new view of kind of supply quality. So really interested to understand, really, again, maybe just a little bit deeper with regards to how those changes in the program approaches have really enabled you guys to identify, prioritize, and address risks better.
Yeah, so about 3 years ago, we made a decision to outsource our auditing. It was seen as not a value-added activity necessarily. My team, and there is only 8 of us, is much better spent, their time is much better spent really working with our suppliers to reduce their risk. So how do we do that? Well, we need to get out there and do technical visits and develop them from an incident crisis point of view rather than a tick box exercise, are they doing the things that we've asked them to do? So that's one of the biggest changes, I think, for my team. Also, the ability to react more quickly. So before, if we wanted to onboard a new supplier, visit a new supplier, it was very much we were reliant on when could we get a team of 8 people out there.
Yep.
But now we can react much more quickly. We can make a decision whether we do that in-house, and that's really looking at, you spoke about segmentation, that's really looking at the risk to McCormick and our customers. So is that supplier really going to cause us a big risk? Is it something that's new and novel that we really feel that we need to get out there? Or actually, is it something a third party can really support us with doing? And then I think really finally, it's just looking at access to data. The fact that my team 3 years ago was segmented into packaging, co-packing, and raw materials. And now we've brought the team all together, and that's globally. So before we worked in 4 different regions, now we're 3. Globally, we're all looking after all the same suppliers. So it means actually we can aggregate that data that we're identifying and look at it across all our categories and really identify where is the risk and use that data to improve our processes, improve our standards, and then feed back through GFSI local programs, which I'm a part of, and make sure that we're improving GFSI programs as well to reduce the risk for everybody.
That's fantastic. And just, that real change in view with regards to kind of how you approach it. And really, it's not about making wholesale changes. It's not about the magic bullet. It's about how do you make those incremental changes to actually get more in tune with really where are those key risks and how can you use your resources. Thank you so much for sharing with the team. Stay here with me. And just really, in concluding kind of the session this afternoon, is what we've talked about now. It's about, and I guess my kind of, if you will, my vision for the future is we just need to get really a clear understanding of what data we need. So making sure that we're focused on the data that we need to help inform kind of really where our true risk is, and that we actually start targeting the things and the activities that we do based on that risk impact to our business. So in this digital transformation that we're all going in, that we're all finding ourselves moving for, it's about ensuring we've got the data that we need and then using that data to help drive and reduce the impact from a risk perspective. Thank you, Liz, for joining me today.
Thank you,
Thank you, everybody, for actually coming and listening. If there's one little piece that you've got to take away, I've done my job. Bye for now.